mother's knife. It belongs to you now.
What for?
A test. She taught you to hunt, yes?
Yes, sir.
Then show me what you know. I am hungry.
My guy.
Feed us.
Well, it's finally happened. The slow demise of E3 has reached its inevitable end. What was once the be-all, end-all of the games industry, an event that everyone and everything the medium touched flocked to, had clearly been on its last legs these last few years, and after a few floundering failed attempts to revitalize itself, it has, sadly, drawn its last breath. The Entertainment Software Association, the United States' primary trade association for games and the organizing body for E3, recently announced that the event has been officially and permanently canceled, which means the unsuccessful attempt to get a reimagined E3 2023 off the ground was the last time we would ever even hear about E3 in an official capacity.
Damn.
In many ways, for anyone who's been paying even the slightest bit of attention these last few years, an obituary for E3 has felt unavoidable. But though it's easy to understand why the event has fallen by the wayside and why the necessity for its existence has diminished so drastically in such a short amount of time, at the same time, it's also hard not to look back at the 20-something years where E3 was an unshakable and ever-present pillar of the games industry, and
Facts.
feel at least a little bit of sadness about how it's wasted away. Even when it made its debut back in 1995, it was clear to
Where the king was born.
everyone that E3 had instantly become the biggest event of the gaming industry. From Sony's historic announcement of the original PlayStation's price and release date, a moment that will forever be regarded as one of the industry's most iconic,
$2.99.
to Sega shadow dropping not a game but an entire console in the form of Sega Saturn, a decision that in hindsight was just plain foolish. In its very first year, E3 played host to some of the most monumentous gaming moments we've ever witnessed, and it continued to be the place to be for such moments and announcements for years and years to come. The list of unforgettable moments that existed at and because of E3 is a never-ending one. From Keanu Reeves on stage with Cyberpunk 2077, to Peter Moore announcing Grand Theft Auto 4 for Xbox 360 with a tattoo on his arm, from spectacularly planned surprises like the reveals of God of War and Resident Evil 7 to reveals for entire consoles and handhelds over the years, from excellent showings of games that we'll always remember, like Metal Gear Solid 2 Sons of Liberty and Fallout 4, to disastrous showings that will also stick out in memory. Reggie Fils-Aimé announcing himself onto the industry, Super Smash Bros. Brawl stealing the show with its Solid Snake reveal.
Man, dog, it is so sad. It's sad the fact because I have heard about E3 for so long, yet for some sad reason I never attended to one. So if you have ever attended to even one of these E3 expos, you are blessed beyond measure. I'm gonna just tell you that right now.
Each shining as the highlight in an otherwise dull Sony press conference, Microsoft tanking itself with the shockingly poor Xbox One reveal, Konami's famously disastrous 2010 presser, Sony taking shots at Microsoft with its instructional video on used game sharing, Killzone 2's controversial gameplay reveal, Microsoft announcing a string of studio acquisitions. Honestly, we could go on and on and on about all the E3 moments over the years that have been etched into stone by this point. Make no mistake about it. When E3 was on, during that week, it was the one and only thing the entire games industry was looking at. And when it wasn't, it still constantly loomed large in the background, always as something that demanded your attention through the sheer weight of its presence and the shadow it cast over everything even slightly related to games. Months and months in advance of the annual showcases, speculation and rumors and questions would kick into overdrive. What new games would be announced? What gameplay showcases would stand out? What new hardware and console reveals could we look forward to? Which company would stumble over itself in making a series of embarrassing and live blunders? So often, E3 was the focal point of so many important and otherwise conversations related to games. But, of course, recent years have been entirely different. And while the sudden turnaround in E3's fortunes has been shocking on a surface level, when you look at just how many problems have contributed to that downfall, that surprise slowly turns into understanding.
Right.
The ESA itself has been hugely responsible for that, from its misguided decision to open up the trade show to the public, causing a litany of organizational and management nightmares, to the exorbitant fees it used to demand for having E3 booths, something that drove an increasing number of companies away from the show as time went on. Hell, in 2019, the ESA even accidentally published an unsecured document containing the private information of thousands of press and influencers who just attended the event, which was emblematic of all the frustrating organizational deficiencies that had plagued E3 with increasing prevalence as time went on. Really, 2018 was the last time we got an actual proper E3, where all the major companies were in attendance at an actual live trade event. In 2019, Sony confirmed that for the first time in E3 history, while the following year Jeff Keighley, who had been working with the ESA on E3 for as long as E3 had existed, confirmed that he was stepping away from his role as well. He would go on to create, produce, and host Summer Games Fest, which, in conjunction with his annual Gamescom Opening Night Live and the Game Awards events, has also had a significant role to play in rendering E3 redundant. In 2020, meanwhile, things only got worse. Shortly after Sony confirmed that it would be skipping the event once again, it was announced that E3 2020 had been canceled.
I mean, this was inevitable. At this time, the pandemic was going on, and I personally feel like the pandemic's still going on to this very day. So this one is very much understandable as to why the 2020 E3 got canceled. So because of the pandemic, mostly. Had it not been the pandemic, I guarantee you E3 will still live to this day. But it's just like what he said. Like 2018 was like the last one that was quite active at the time. And then when 2020 came around, that's where it really started to go into shambles.
Altogether. Given the circumstances of that year, where the entire world at large was dealing with the pandemic, the cancellation came as no surprise. But when E3 did return in 2021, it did so in severely underwhelming fashion. The continued impact of the pandemic meant that E3 2021 had to return as a digital-only event. And it quickly...
And I guarantee you a lot of people did not like that at all. I have a feeling that nobody really liked it, for real. They said that pandemic was no joke. Exactly, bro. Exactly. Fam, when I sit here and tell you the pandemic was me personally, because in 2018 was like the last one that was like quite active like that. Then when 2020 came around, that's where everything starts to go crazy in the worst way possible. So I feel like the pandemic is the reason, gotta be the core reason why E3 is no longer around, unfortunately.
It became clear to everyone that, for the most part, the companies who were attending didn't actually have much to show. Or if they did, they didn't see E3 2021 as a suitable stage to show those things. And from then on, it was further downhill still. E3 2022 never really got off the ground, and when it was canceled, it came as no surprise to the majority of people. The following year, however, was supposed to be a revitalization of the event, with the ESA bringing back E3 as a physical in-person event, but that never really came to anything. By that time, E3 stock had already plummeted so low that when E3 2023 was also officially canceled, the majority of us had seen it coming a mile off. It didn't help E3's case in the slightest that the industry hadn't really felt its absence in any tangible material way. In fact, in its absence, it grew and adapted to models that, as it turned out, were far more efficient and cost-effective. In 2019, when Sony announced that it would not be attending the event, then PlayStation boss Sean Layden very publicly questioned its importance, raising questions about why companies couldn't just hold their own shows. That was, of course, something that Nintendo had already been doing since 2011, while EA too had stepped away from E3 to hold its own showcases. And since then, it's grown significantly more prevalent, with the likes of Sony, Microsoft, and many others having preferred to host their own showcases and streams, rather than having to pay obscene amounts of money to have a presence at a poorly managed event, sticking to an increasingly archaic model.
Boy, when I sit here and tell you, despite the fact E3 is gone, when E3 was around, that event is not cheap at all. That sucker is expensive. That sucker was expensive, bro. It was expensive. I kid you not.
In 1995, E3 began with the emergence of PlayStation and the drubbing of Sega. And over the last few years, it has ended with a drubbing of its own. For over 2 decades, the event was the face of the industry, for better or for worse, so its demise came as sad news to all concerned. Sadly, however, looking at how things have gone in the last few years, it hasn't exactly been a surprise.
Thanks, and have a great E3.
I don't know what that was all about.
Gaming Vault upload new videos.
I don't know what that was about, but yeah, bro. So, yeah, bro. That's man. I'm sick that I never went, but at the same time, we had it coming at the same time, though. So, and this sucks, but it.